250,000 students in England, Wales and Northern Ireland received their A-level results today with a record 86% pass rate. It's the 15th year in a row that they've improved, and it's led to renewed criticism of falling standards and calls for a major reform of the exam board system. But with a record number of students attaining grades for university, the rush is now on for the remaining places. Steve Smith reports from Leeds on the row and how universities are being forced to use new methods to attract entrants to fill the less popular courses.
Like many others, Lara Searle has been waiting until today's results.
You ready to order?
In her case, literally. Her fortunes are directly linked to general A-level standards. She got 4 passes a year ago and took a year off. She's sure of going to college, but candidates with better grades could squeeze her out of a place to study the media.
Media studies is probably the most competitive in the country, I would think. How well other people do in their A-levels probably could maybe jeopardise whether I get a place at university or not.
At Trinity College Leeds, good news for some of Lara's fellow applicants.
You've been accepted. We've taken you to do theology with primary education. Let's go on.
But Lara's own fears are looking well-founded. She'd have had no such problems with a less fashionable degree.
The media course is in high demand and we have to select the best applicants we can for it, whereas with Spanish, for example, I'm afraid there's a very low demand and we are looking for candidates who will be able to complete the course satisfactorily. That's our criterion, really. Can they get through the degree course? If they can, we can offer them a place.
Yet another bumper year for A-levels has given rise to criticism that the exams are too easy. That doesn't go down too well with candidates.
Everyone puts 100% into it and gets what they deserve, I think, you know. I think it's probably the teaching, and with experience, everyone's getting better, so that's what it is, I think. I really don't think they're getting easier at all.
However, there's concern over the modular structure of A-levels. They include tests which can be retaken if necessary. Some university maths departments have had to lay on remedial coaching for products of this system, but examiners defend it.
It's something that's being encouraged in every other examination system in the country. Universities use that system, and the professional bodies use that system, and of course the vocational examinations use that system as well. So it's very ironical, really, to think that the only system that's criticised for having a modular approach is A-level. That's not fair-handed.
I think a lot of people are focusing on the wrong question. What we want to see, and what our managers are saying, is that the skill base that is being developed in our educational establishments are not matching the requirements of industry and commerce. And that is the crucial issue.
Live from Leeds, the fastest growing city in the UK, this is the new 96.3 Air FM.
Yeah, we all
Not everyone agrees that today's A-level successes may be bad for business.
At Humberside University campus in Hull, you get all the help you need to achieve.
This radio station will make £100,000 this year by playing adverts aimed at prospective undergraduates.
It's very buoyant this time of year. We've noticed a dramatic increase over the past few years, but at this particular moment, we're probably taking more money from that sector than at any other time before, which is very good for us.
Universities pursue students as hard as they do them. The reason is that funding is pegged to student numbers. But couldn't the advertising and promotional budgets be better spent on lecturers or books?
Yes, but if we don't advertise to get the students in, that's somebody's job, because the students bring the finances into the college as well. So it's investing, really, in order to attract the students so that we can have the finances that go with the students to keep the staff and the college going.
The Chancellor made swingeing cuts to higher education earlier in the year. This means that the recruitment to courses is ever more critical this year. Admissions tutors are wanting to fill their courses because if they don't, there could be redundancies. So students should look around, they should shop around, and they should take best advice. Don't necessarily jump at the first place offered.
A media suite at Trinity College. The government, which welcomed today's results, says how colleges spend their money is up to them. The question of how well universities and colleges are doing in attracting students has joined the old chestnut of how well the students themselves do as reflected in A-level grades. Steve Smith, Channel 4 News, Leeds.
You're watching Channel 4 News. Our main headline tonight. Amid unprecedented razzmatazz, including an emotional appeal from his wife, Bob Dole has been officially chosen as the Republican candidate in November's presidential election. He received nearly unanimous backing at his party's convention in San Diego. And still to come on tonight's programme, Gaining a Stone. How battle has been joined to determine where in Scotland the Stone of Destiny should be put on show. First, the day's other main news. The rail passengers watchdog has criticised lack of investment in the railways, particularly on the West Coast Main Line. The report follows last week's train crash at Watford on the southern end of the line. The Central Rail Users Consultative Committee also attacked delays in measures to improve passenger safety.
Reporting on a year which saw the return to the rail network of privately owned and privately operated trains for the first time for 50 years, the Passengers Watchdog says that on privatisation, the jury is still out. It was the 13th consecutive year in which complaints increased, and there are few surprises in the kind of complaints which increased most. Complaints about passenger comfort on the train went up by no less than just under 79%. Complaints about overcrowding rose by 48%, and about punctuality by 33%. But on safety and security, they went up by only a little over 2%. Safety means investment, and the new chairman of the committee picked up that point.
We've had virtually no investment, whether it be in trains, whether it be in the West Coast Main Line, that's been an ongoing story for 5 or 6 years now. And sadly, of course, we still today got trains not in use which were built more than 2 years ago.
The performance of the West Coast Main Line, says the committee, has begun to show alarming signs of deterioration in the absence of a start to the major upgrading needed.
We have Railtrack, where it's coming forward with £1 billion of improvements, and that's already started. It's not waiting for the franchising of the railways on those lines. That is happening, and tenders are out to start that work going.
But anyone who knows the West Coast Main Line doesn't feel very happy about it, because it used to be the premier line, and it's declined over the years so that it's unsatisfactory and it feels unsafe.
It was on a stretch of the West Coast Main Line near Watford that two trains collided last week. Only the official inquiry will reveal to what extent, if at all, lack of investment was a factor.
It's been confirmed that the head of the government's new commission to investigate miscarriages of justice is a Freemason. Politicians and campaigners have called for Sir Frederick Crawford to resign, claiming his Masonic connections will compromise his inquiries. Cathy Smith reports.
Sir Frederick, the retiring Vice-Chancellor of Aston University, is to start work next year heading the Criminal Cases Review Commission. But confirmation of his membership of the Freemasons has brought an outcry from campaigners involved in cases of miscarriage of justice such as the Guildford 4 and the Birmingham 6.
If people are members of the Masons or any other similar secret society, they should disclose that before they take on public office. And for something as sensitive as this job, he should disclose this to the public, and I don't think he has. I think, therefore, people in prison who expect justice from this body will be questioning whether they're going to get that.
Despite the enigmatic nature of Freemasonry with its handshakes and rituals, membership is in fact in the public domain. Labour want to know if the Home Secretary was aware of Sir Frederick's involvement prior to his appointment. A Home Office statement simply said he was the best man for the job. It added they were fully confident that he would not allow any improper consideration to influence his judgment. Masonry is said to be common in the police force, although recently the Metropolitan Police Chief advised his officers against it. Freemasons deny that their vows of allegiance to fellow members could compromise Sir Frederick's inquiries.
You promise to keep a brother's lawful secrets, but that is very heavily qualified by the statement that murder, treason, felony, and all offences contrary to the laws of God and the ordinances of the realm are at all times most especially accepted, so that not only does a Freemason have to uphold the law, but he's breaking our rules if he knows of another Freemason who has broken the law and doesn't report it.
With calls from both Labour and Liberal Democrats for his resignation tonight, Sir Frederick was away on holiday and not available for comment.
The hospital which treated the woman who had one of her healthy twins aborted has confirmed it did publish false details about the mother to protect her identity. Queen Charlotte's Hospital, where the abortion took place, had originally claimed she was a single mother who would be unable to support 2 children. But a newspaper article today claims that the woman is a middle-class professional married to a company director. The hospital has obtained an injunction banning the media from identifying her. Glasgow is set to become the first city in Scotland to impose a blanket ban on drinking in public. It comes into effect on Monday, together with a crackdown on underage drinking. Police have welcomed the move, claiming that similar but smaller bans in other parts of Scotland have reduced crime and public disorder. Abroad, and Russia's security chief Alexander Lebed has returned to Chechnya with additional powers to try to end the conflict in the breakaway republic. General Lebed met Russian army officials and plans to hold further talks with the commander of the Chechen rebel forces. Fighting in the capital Grozny subsided today as separatist rebels strengthened their control of the city.
The people of Grozny are taking advantage of the lull in the fighting that has followed yesterday's shaky ceasefire to escape the city. Ceasefires here don't generally last very long. It's also a chance to bury the dead. The rebels say dozens of refugees have been killed in the last 24 hours, killed by Russian air attacks on the roads out of Grozny. Today, all hopes of peace ironically rest with a Russian general. Alexander Lebed has been given sweeping powers to put an end to this war. He's put down wars before and is keen to succeed where the President and Prime Minister have failed before him.
It's important to find out who is to blame for starting this war. But before that, we must stop people killing each other, whatever their nationality.
In Moscow, Prime Minister Viktor Chernomyrdin, relieved of responsibility for Chechnya, named his new cabinet. The generals in charge of the Defence and Interior Ministries kept their jobs, despite their admission today that 2,000 Chechen fighters were still in Grozny. But as if to demonstrate the government's commitment to economic reform, a 35-year-old banker, Vladimir Potanin, was appointed Deputy Prime Minister, and Alexander Lifshitz, a Western-style economist, was named Finance Minister. Mr. Lifshitz was in charge of settling pay claims in the public sector. Miners across the country went out on strike last month after the government failed to live up to pre-election pledges to pay millions of dollars in wage arrears. In an exclusive interview with Channel 4 News in his Kremlin office, Alexander Lifshitz insisted that every promise to every worker that Boris Yeltsin made ahead of the elections would be fulfilled, but jobs would have to go.
Unemployment is unavoidable. We'll survive only if we cut costs and are more efficient. That means there won't be enough jobs for everyone. It's a stage we will have to go through.
Ahead of the elections, Boris Yeltsin said the war in Chechnya was over and the workers would be paid. So far, he's failed badly on both fronts, and he's described as totally exhausted. It's hardly surprising that public confidence in the president has already dipped dramatically. Lawrence McDonnell, Channel 4 News, Moscow.
The United States has accused the Turkish security forces of using disproportionate force in responding to a demonstration yesterday by Greek Cypriots in the UN buffer zone. Earlier, the Turkish Foreign Minister, Tansu Çiller, arrived in northern Cyprus. She warned that her government would break the hands of anyone who insulted her country, though Mrs. Çiller also appealed for peace. A Greek Cypriot man was shot dead yesterday while trying to pull down Turkey's flag. In South Korea, riot police have surrounded a university for the second consecutive day to try to break up a student demonstration calling for the unification of North and South Korea. Police fired tear gas at Yonsei University in Seoul, where around 6,000 students have taken refuge. They've threatened to set off explosions if they're arrested. The first commercial flight in more than 4 years has landed in Sarajevo. The American Secretary of State, Warren Christopher, joined the Bosnian President, Alija Izetbegovic, in a ceremony to open the airport for civilian flights. Warren Christopher later went on to tour parts of Sarajevo to see for himself what progress had been made to rebuild the city. He appealed to all Bosnians to support next month's elections. Business news, and there's been a small increase in the rate of inflation, thanks partly to rising house prices. The headline inflation figure was 2.2% in the year to July, compared to a rate of 2.1% the previous month. But it's thought unlikely the rise will deter the Chancellor from cutting interest rates.
I think it leaves the Chancellor with the upper hand. Inflation is low, consumers are cautious, the economy is not accelerating at a too rapid a rate, and therefore there is room for lower interest rates. I think that the Governor's fears will once again prove to be unwarranted.
In the city, shares ended higher. The Financial Times index of 100 leading shares closed up by just over 7 points. On the foreign exchanges, sterling rose by 0.1% against the dollar. The pound was unchanged against the German mark. Well, just after there were claims that there could be life on Mars, scientists have uncovered evidence that there could be life on one of Jupiter's moons. New images from the Galileo space probe depict a cracked icy surface on Europa, Jupiter's largest moon. Scientists believe that there could be slush or water lying 50 miles beneath the surface, suggesting for the first time a theoretical evidence of life. And now a look at the weather. Tonight, much of Scotland and Northern Ireland will have a cloudy night with some light rain and drizzle. There'll be patchy mist and fog in England and Wales, but otherwise it'll be dry and mild. Tomorrow, there'll be a few showers in southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England, but these will gradually clear away to leave a dry and bright day. The rest of England and Wales will be dry and sunny, with temperatures reaching around 25 Celsius. And the outlook for the next few days, the weekend will be warm and sunny, though rain will reach northwestern areas by Sunday. After the break, the latest on the Republican convention in San Diego. Plus here, destiny unknown. The owner of Scone Palace is lobbying to have the Stone of Destiny returned there when it goes back to Scotland. But the burghers of Edinburgh think the city's museums and tourist infrastructure make the Scottish capital a more attractive destination.
Orange believe you shouldn't be rushed into anything, which is why we offer a 14-day money-back guarantee. The future's bright. The future's orange.
Someone can give you 3 for the price of 2. Who always gives you 3 for 2 offers on a wide range of toiletries? Boots.
I love duty calls. See the car?
Almira.
GTI. Let's go!
Cover me! Huh?
Go faster. I'm doing nearly 30.
Naughty boy. Turn left.
Why?
Litter. Makes the car look good.
Time do you call this? Sorry, Gov. Traffic was murder.
Never make professionals.
Neither were they.
The election, Almira.
Tell me about it.
Why didn't you tell me you were inviting them?
I wanted to surprise you.
When you walk through the global village, make sure you carry a global currency. Over 200 million people in over 200 countries speak MasterCard.
Pizza delivery!
Back up.
Every language speaks MasterCard.
The decision to return the Stone of Destiny to Scotland has opened up a fierce battle over where exactly it should be housed. Edinburgh is expected to be the leading contender when the deadline for submissions closes tomorrow, but many believe it should be returned to Scone, the ancient crowning place of Scottish kings. It was from there in 1296 that Edward I of England seized the stone before placing it in Westminster Abbey. Peter Morgan now reports on this battle over the ancient rock and the doubts that remain over whether it's the genuine article.
These days, Scone Palace in Perthshire draws thousands of tourists to its ornate halls and galleries. Past visitors were of nobler birth, here to watch the Scottish kings acclaimed upon the stone of Scone, the stone of destiny. On the sacred site, there's now a sandstone replica, built in 1983 rather than 843. Edward I seized the original stone in 1296 and took it to London. A medieval prophecy warned that where this stone lies, the Scots shall reign. The Stone of Destiny is on its way home, 700 years late, and Scone wants it back.
If something is stolen, it is morally returned from whence it came, and for that reason it should certainly come back to Scone. I would think that most Scots at some time in their life will pay one visit. It will turn out to be a sort of low-key pilgrimage.
As with all PR battles, the Scone campaign comes with its own spin-offs. A scone of Scone was cooked up by a local baker. Sadly, this proved to be its last outing. Advanced mould and a kidnap attempt had left their mark. Like the real stone, the scone now comes in two rather unappetizing pieces. Undeterred, Scone is bolstering its historic claim with a trusted medieval tactic, a petition with more than 4,000 names demanding that the stone come home. Support too from the local Tory MP, though he did have doubts about the wisdom of bringing the stone back to Scotland.
If I'd been asked in advance, I might have had some reservations. I wasn't asked in advance. Now the decision is taken, I'm determined to make it work to the advantage of the country, to the people, and the monarchy, and the Union.
If you'd been asked in advance, what would have been your view?
I would have had strong reservations, because as a constitutional unionist, I've studied the Constitution, and I like to keep, as far as I can, the stability there.
Reaction in Scotland was fairly positive, but positive along the lines of yes, thanks very much, but it should have been here hundreds of years ago, and don't expect us to be overly grateful for something that was ours by right in the first place.
For the last 7 centuries, the stone has been at Westminster Abbey, a painful reminder to some Scottish nationalists of the English conquest. In the Abbey, it takes a symbolic place inside the coronation chair. It'll return here for the next crowning ceremony. In the meantime, the stone's become a fresh focus for national aspirations, and some want it placed in a future Scottish Parliament.
If it's going to come back to Scotland, what better than to convert this symbol of feudalism into a symbol of democracy, put it in the Speaker's chair of the new Parliament, where it will be on public view and will indeed be seen on television every day the Scottish Parliament is in session and being televised. So there could be no better place for it to be put on public view as a symbol of the restoration of Scottish nationhood and indeed a modern Scottish democracy.
Edinburgh Castle has also shown an interest in housing the stone, as has St Giles's Cathedral. Other institutions have until tomorrow to put in their proposals. A Glasgow pub has offered to house the sacred stone, but rumours that Hearts Football Club were interested in a new transfer were firmly denied. The Stone of Destiny may also take up residence on this building site. A new Museum of Scotland will open here on St Andrew's Day 1998, and supporters say it'll be an ideal location for the long-absent stone. The museum already houses some of the most potent relics of Scottish kingship. The Monymusk reliquary dates back to the 8th century. And the Stone of Destiny appears on the seal of Scone Abbey, which shows the coronation of Alexander III. All these objects, say academics, would help show the stone in its proper context.
It needs absolute security, and the museum can give that. It needs absolute accessibility, and the museum can give that. And it needs to be understood in a proper historic context, with the real objects associated with it round about, and only the museum can give that.
The stone has already made one visit to Scotland this century. In 1950, a group of Scottish patriots smuggled it out of Westminster Abbey. The BBC banned jokes on the subject. The King was kept informed. Just over a year later, the stone resurfaced at Arbroath Abbey. But was it the right one?
There is no doubt that the stone that was taken by Edward I in 1296 to Westminster, that stone is coming back. That has been tested and proved to be the correct stone. Whether the correct stone went in 1296 to Westminster, that is much more dubious. There are various theories about other stones. The abbot who was looking after the stone here at the abbey had plenty of warning that Edward was after it. It would have been logical for him to have swapped it.
On the other hand, there's Reverend John Mackay Nimmo of Dundee. A retired minister, he claims to have the real Stone of Destiny, or at least the one that was taken from Westminster in 1950. Publicity drove the stone from its resting place in the village of Dull. It's currently hiding somewhere in Scotland.
You don't expect ministers to subscribe stories that are all baloney. No, I've got to say that. I'm telling you the truth. The whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Now, if you can't take that from a minister, I don't know what you want.
Edward I was playing politics when he seized the stone in the 13th century. Nationalists claim the Tories are now trying the same game, using the Stone of Destiny to bolster their electoral chances. Expect a rousing return, they say, about 3 weeks before the next general election.
Peter Morgan reporting. And this time tomorrow evening we'll have a special report on the visit to Britain of one of the great dancers of our time, Mikhail Baryshnikov. We have a rare interview and we see him rehearsing and performing in Spain at the beginning of his European tour. That's tomorrow, but now a look again at tonight's headlines. There's been a record 86% pass rate in A-level results for England, Wales and Northern Ireland. But as students celebrated, there was criticism that the better figures may be masking a fall in educational standards. The rail passengers watchdog has criticised the lack of investment on the West Coast Main Line, scene of last week's train crash. And there have been calls for Sir Frederick Crawford to resign as head of the new Criminal Cases Review Commission after it was confirmed he's a Freemason.
And our main headline tonight here in San Diego, Bob Dole has won, as predicted, the Republican nomination for the presidency following a carefully choreographed rallying call from his wife Elizabeth. He's promising the most right-wing agenda ever put before the American voters, and the signs are that with the convention about to reach its climax later tonight, Mr. Dole has succeeded in cutting Bill Clinton's opinion poll lead in half. We're joined now by Fred Barnes, editor of the Weekly Standard, a conservative magazine here. He's one of America's most respected political commentators. Fred Barnes, well, Dole's managed to cut that lead, but he hasn't even spoken yet, and that speaking is his big problem. He's dull.
He's dull. He usually doesn't have much to say, and people are turned off. He's going to have to be so different tonight that it'll be a sea change in Bob Dole as a political performer. He's had time to practice. The speech was written some weeks ago, though they've had to manicure it, so it may be a strong performance. It better be, for his sake.
He wasn't the Republican that you and your magazine wanted to lead this effort. How are you fixed tonight?
Well, you know, Bob Dole is a guy who's never been an ideological politician. He's been a guy who fixes the deal, who makes the deal in Congress, and so they've really had to whip up an agenda for him because he didn't automatically have one. Now they have one, the whole economic agenda, a 15% tax cut, and that's going to be what he's going to talk about tonight.
But the hardest selling point surely is, folks, forget this generation, go back one. Here's an old guy who's been around forever. He's not known to stand for much. Elect him.
Yeah, well, that's why you have to say, I do stand for something now, and getting Jack Kemp on the ticket helps that a lot. You've gotten a vice president who's identified in America as Mr. Tax Cuts, and Republicans are banking on a very simple thing, and that is, if tax cutting is the main subject of this campaign, Republicans win.
But they don't like each other. How on earth are they going to endure the next 82 days?
Politics makes strange bedfellows, even particularly here in the United States, and they're getting along pretty well for now. I mean, Jack Kemp is overcome with how nice Bob Dole has been to pick him, and Bob Dole figures, well, I'm number one, he's number two, he'll obey orders.
Just a shade of self-interest here. Earlier in the program we had James Baker saying that relations with Britain had been taken to the lowest since the Boston Tea Party by Clinton. Is that entirely fair, and would Dole do any better?
No, I don't think that's entirely fair. They've tried to gin up a foreign policy issue based on really the first year of Bill Clinton in office, when he did have some problems in Somalia and elsewhere. His foreign policy now has had some successes in Haiti, and Bosnia has been a reasonable success. I think they're going to have trouble making much hay out of that.
Do you think they're going to be able to really hammer him on talking to the IRA?
No, I really don't. I mean, for one thing, it's not an issue that very many Americans care about.
What do you think finally will determine this thing? Is it really Clinton's to lose or Dole's to win?
Well, Dole has to be a great candidate, and it's really Clinton's to lose. Dole can only get so close. He can give a great speech tonight, but we have an incumbent president who's been president in a period of peace and prosperity. Dole has to really sell some compelling reasons why we should oust that guy. He hasn't done it yet.
Fred Barnes, thank you very much. We're back same time, 7 o'clock tomorrow night. But from Tanya in London and from me in San Diego, that's Channel 4 News. Good evening.
Now on 4 in tonight's slot, a poetic protest about BSE.
Away in the mangers of these British Isles, no cattle are lowing, and slaughter is nigh, whilst government cribs and farmers go bust, the country's bewildered in wonder and must. The story goes back to Thatcherite days, when the lady took the restrictions away, and cattle, the creator, made pure herbivores, and the favoured tycoons became carnivores. The millers mixed in the brains of the sheep, and doing this whilst farmers were asleep. And in their gross ignorance, the farmers did feed their cattle and pigs with this deadly weed. But years ago, the Americans awoke and cancelled our beef at one so swift stroke. But still, John Major let the cattle be so fed, whilst assuring the nation we were safely led. Yet BSE caused the government no worry, though this was the time to pay farmers money to cull the herds, while few were affected. But penny wise, pound foolish was Major's directive. Then, lo and behold,